Hi everyone, welcome to the penultimate day of the industry at London Short Film Festival. In our 10th year now, and it's great to see so many people at all of our events, including this one. Really excited for this panel today. It's been really informative and exciting. I won't say too much about it, I shall leave it to the experts. Thank you very much for coming down today, and we hope to see you for the rest of the festival.
Thanks very much, Neil. My name's Kate Kinnerwood. I run Women in Film and TV. There are some leaflets about us there. Next to me, we have Bridget Williams, or are you known as Bridge? She's known as Bridge. Next to her, we have Esther Hegarty, known as Esther. And then we have Nicola Lees, who runs our mentoring programs, and she is also known as Nicola. Now, Women in Film and TV, we're actually about 22 years old, and we were set up to support the women in the industry. I've been a member for about 20 years, and sad to say, it's very interesting that there are still not, there's still not equality in either film or TV. And the latest stats show that half of all the women working in TV today are under 35. And when you look at all the BAFTA and Oscar nominations, as we have been doing, you'll see there are very few women directors and very few women screenwriters. So we have still got a long way to go. But what we have discovered in the course of running events, running networkings, screening people's work, doing shadowing schemes, is that one of the best ways of helping women is mentoring. And we've had our mentoring scheme running now for 3 years. Nicola, at the end here, has devised, it's a unique mentoring scheme that is so brilliant that Skillset asked us if we would run the scheme out throughout Britain. Sadly, they didn't have enough money to help us to do that, but one day we will. I'd like to start with Nicola, first of all, to ask her a little bit about the scheme, and then we'll hear from Esther and Bridge, who have each experienced the scheme. Bridge has just started, and Esther was one of the first, a guinea pig. But Nicola, could you just fill us in on what you're trying to do with the scheme?
Yeah, so the scheme is, it runs for 6 months, and I selected 20 women, half from film, half from TV, and they're working across as many different specialties as I can possibly find. So we've had editors, writers, media lawyers, somebody working in distribution, somebody working in technical ops, and then also across different genres as well. So fiction film, drama serials, documentary, science, history, entertainment, news, wildlife, comedy, children's, everything. And that becomes important because as well as the people on the scheme are matched with an industry mentor, and they get 6 hours of mentoring over 6 months. So that's kind of one stream of the scheme. But running alongside that, I get the group together every fortnight at least, and they are all invited to give a seminar of 1 hour each on a subject of their choice.
Invited.
So every fortnight we meet and we have 2 seminars from people. So it's like going to film school really, because, you know, I mean, Esther might tell you about it, and she talked about how to get a few pages of action off a script onto the screen. And we've had people talk about distribution. We've had somebody who's a scheduler at Nat Geo channel talking about how they schedule programs, which is fascinating. So what we're doing there is sharing information between lots of different women in working in different parts of the industry. But actually, I think you might have found that we've all got very similar issues that we might be trying to deal with. So it's just a way of, once the 6 hours of mentoring is finished, you've still got, as part of the group, hopefully a group of friends and colleagues who will go on into the future with you and still support, and I'm sure Esther will talk a little bit about that too.
Well, Esther, can you tell us, first of all, a little bit about what you were doing work-wise in 2010, was it, when you started the scheme? And then tell us what your aims and ambitions were for the scheme for you.
When we started the scheme, I had just finished working as assistant to the second unit director on the Pirates of the Caribbean 4, and had previously worked as Richard Attenborough's assistant and had also been an AD in film and television, and throughout my jobs as an assistant, had the ambition to be a director myself, and had made short films, and was finding that I had got to a point where I was a bit stuck. I'd made the short films, which had been very well received, but I was getting a lot of assisting work, but I couldn't seem to make the leap from being an assistant to getting paid and being a fully established director. And so when I saw the scheme advertised on shooting people, I decided that it sounded like a great thing for me to do to reach those goals. And I applied and got in.
Now, Bridge, you just applied quite recently. What on earth made you do it?
Well, I've been an assistant editor for quite a few years, and I was assisting on feature films, most of the Joe Wright films up until Hannah, and was living quite a cushioned life, I suppose. Wanted to make the break to become an editor myself, and needed just to, I feel, have a bit more support in emerging, as it were. I kind of feel that my skills were okay in terms of being a drama editor, but in terms of sitting in a room by myself, cutting is one thing, telling the industry that you're now transitioned into a different role is quite another, because it just seems so vast. So the mentoring scheme appealed to me for that respect, in terms of self-promotion, in terms of actually networking, in terms of having a support team, which is our peer group, and also obviously having a mentor who can perhaps guide me in the right way. So it was an editor actually who I'd gone for some advice, who mentioned, I wasn't actually a member, but I hadn't thought for 1 second I'd be able to or even be considered, but I applied, and luckily I'm on board, and it's been wonderful so far, just the last 2 months.
So far, so good.
So far.
Well, thinking about the two of you as case studies, it looks like both of you were assisting great people, doing very well, but the transition from not just from assisting to becoming a director or an editor is also partly how you transition in your own head and how you change your own approach. Now, is this quite a typical thing when people come to be mentored about coming for a transition from one place to another?
The scheme is kind of set up specifically for people who have got some experience, at least 5 years, and some of the people on the scheme have got substantially more than that, more like 25 years. But it's people who, as Kate said, or somebody said, a bit stuck, or are going through some kind of transition, which might be coming back after maternity leave, or it might be, you know, they've worked in one place for a long time and are facing redundancy and are going freelance for the first time, or sometimes we've had people who have made the step up from producer to series producer and are kind of, you know, slightly anxious about now taking on more of a management role and delegation. So it's usually people who are in some kind of transition period, and I think a lot of what the mentors do is quite often giving permission for people to acknowledge and recognise the skills that they do have, because I think we're quite often quite good at saying, well, I'm not as good as that other person, without saying, but I have achieved all of this and I can do this job, and therefore I can go out and tell people I can do it. So it's a confidence thing quite often, and just having somebody reflect that back to you and say, but hold on a minute, you have done this, why can't you say it? I think it's quite empowering and surprising sometimes, I think.
One of the things that surprises me is how Nicola chooses mentors for people. She's kind of like a dating agency, and you do ask people if they have an ideal mentor in mind. And could you talk a bit about that? You know, people often think that their mentor should be somebody who is like them, only higher up, but you don't necessarily go the obvious route, do you?
No, I can't really talk about this because I don't quite know how I do it myself. So I have a massive database of potential mentors, people who I've got my eye on or I've spotted in the press, and then as I tell you, they go through quite quite an interview process. So there's quite a detailed application form where they have to say what their goals are, where they are right now, what they've done to improve things, if anything, and what kind of, or who would they say would be their ideal mentor and why. And that's just all of that and the interview where I kind of try and find out, it's kind of an anti-interview, so it's not about them telling me about all the fantastic things they've done. It's me really trying to understand who they are as people, what their personality is like, what kind of people they would get on with, what kind of approach would best suit them. Do they need somebody who's very kind of goal-focused, and you need to do this, this and this, or somebody who's a bit more discursive and reflective about things. So that's me kind of trying to diagnose. And quite often people interviewing in their application forms say one thing, but actually they're really saying something else without really saying it. And sometimes that's really apparent to me. And if I say, but you're telling me this, but I get the sense that you really want to do that, and they say, oh yes, I hadn't thought of that. And so sometimes you do know within yourself what you want and what you need, you just haven't quite articulated it, or you've buried it or something. So it's my job to try and dig that out. And then the second part of the job is then to go out to the industry and find somebody who is going to be the right match for you. And that I do by researching potential mentors, both trying to find somebody who's got something in common with you in terms of perhaps work background, but also in terms of personality. So I'm looking at videos, I'm looking at interviews they've done to try and work out what kind of person they are. And then I contact them, and it's all kind of based on whether I get a good vibe. So it's a bit of alchemy, to be honest, as well, and a bit of a finger in the wind. But mostly it's worked out pretty well, I think. I think people are quite surprised, and I don't quite know how that happens, but it just does.
Well, Bridge, you've already met your mentor. Would you like to tell us are we allowed to say who they are? Yeah.
Okay. I was matched with Nina Bagwat, and she works for Talent Manager, which is an agency that kind of deals with emerging talents in producers, writers. I think for Channel 4 she's worked with them on their kind of entry level, and she's now based at the BBC. So it's all training, and it's very much about I suppose, self-promotion, the very thing that I'm terrified of doing. One part of the scheme is giving this seminar, which has been touched on, an hour-long seminar, which I remember putting in my CV, in my application form, saying I was terrified of doing that, and now I find myself here, 2 months later, and this is what this course is, this scheme is all about, I suppose, challenging those parts of you that you find confronting. And my mentor is right on the money. She's right there. She's, I was doing role play with her last year, which was thankfully not recorded. It needs a lot more work. But, that's the kind of thing where you kind of, I suppose my mentor would have been another editor who had the kind of the map that I wish to follow, but that's not what I got. That's perhaps not what I needed. So, it's that, as you say, this alchemy really of actually finding what's right for you at the time of which you need it. So, yeah.
And Esther, what about your mentor? How did that work out? Was it the kind of person you expected?
I got Carol Wiseman, who's a BAFTA award-winning director who's retired now, and she's not who I thought for myself either, but has turned out to be the best thing that I could imagine. Because we stayed in touch after the course. She motivated me to make another short film. During the course, she gave me her husband's house to shoot the film. She did the catering for the film. And then
wow.
The film that I just made in October, she was there, and it was a 3-day shoot. She was there every day. She again did some of the catering. She took photographs on set. She's just been absolutely brilliant. She's contacted a composer for us, and I'm in constant contact with her, even though it's 2 years since I started this month, 2 years ago. So I couldn't have asked for anything better.
Now, as well as having, I still can't believe this, a mentor who did the catering on your set. Wow. Can you tell us about the fact that you were working with some of the other mentees? Mentees is a terrible name, but we haven't come up with a better one.
Our group got on so well together that I have to say the one thing that I didn't think about when I applied for the scheme was how I was going to interact with the other people on the scheme. I was really just thinking about how it was going to be between myself and my mentor, and so it was a great surprise and really fulfilling to find out that the other women on the scheme were really interesting, really supportive. I don't think I've been with a more supportive group of people who were keen to help each other, and we're still in touch. We meet about every 6 weeks to 3 months, and on my last short I had help from 3 of the other mentees on the scheme, so one of them produced it.
Oh, I was just going to say, could you say what they did? That would be interesting to know.
Rebecca Long produced it. She's just finished exec producing a film called The Sea, starring Rufus Sewell, and then Kaja Jusinska, she was just an extra body on set. She took some photographs and did anything like being the runner, anything that we needed. And Charlotte Fisher, she lent us a camera for second unit, and Astrid Edwards was the second unit. So it was a joint effort with all the mentees.
Now, Nicola, how important is it that people actually know what they want when they apply?
It's kind of tricky, I guess. A lot of people, I try and get people to articulate it because I need that in order to find somebody who's going to be a good match for them, who can help. But quite often people do change what they want to do during the course of the scheme. And I think it's quite good that they're given the kind of permission and space to be, and I do encourage people to be exploring different avenues as well, and not necessarily just keep their eye on one particular goal, because actually there might be, in this age of when we've got to all diversify and do different things, then maybe there are other ways that you could fulfil your creative instincts and earn money, which would then allow you to do the other stuff as well. So it's quite hard when people have got two very different goals in terms of me as a scheme producer, because do I put them with the person who's going to help them with their comedy script, or do I help them with the person who's going to help them with their current affairs documentary? Those are two quite different things that one mentor probably isn't going to help them with, and that whichever mentor I put them with is going to probably feel a bit frustrated that they're not helping them with the other part. So that is kind of difficult for me. But I do, I've got portfolio career, I do lots of different things, so I completely understand that people do have lots of different strings to their career. But I think in terms of the mentoring, it's quite helpful, I think, if you've got quite specific things that at least your mentor can help you with. And then in this particular scheme, I always say, if your mentor can't help you with something, then there's probably somebody in the group who can. I don't know, is that fair? I don't know.
I'd say so, because even the other day, one of the mentees sent a round robin saying, I have this dilemma, any ideas? And people who have the experience are feeding back to them and helping them make the decision.
Yeah. I also think sometimes, and I'm guilty of this myself, that people get to a certain point in their career and they've been quite successful or have had a success, and then it's like they get stage fright and say, oh, I've got that far, so I've made my first feature or my first short, my first whatever, and now I'm going to do something completely different, start again, right from the beginning again, and then start again, so that you're always a beginner, so nobody's ever going to judge you beyond being a beginner. I think that can be a form of procrastination, not, kind of following through and going, okay, I'm going to step it up now for the next one, and, perhaps be a bit more exposed, have a bigger budget, and, have to put myself out there a bit more. So I think there is an element of that sometimes.
Can I just add actually to that, because what's quite good in this course is that you're asked to clearly state in your application, and then once you join, you're asked again to state your current goals. So it's very much about keeping your goals in focus and at the front part of your mind, so your intent is always quite clear, which is quite an obvious thing to think about, but I think in the freelance world it's quite difficult to kind of keep your eye on the goal and to be sidetracked. So to be accountable for what you've said in your application form, and to be continuously accountable to your mentor, and also perhaps even to what you've divulged to your peer group is supportive in itself. Yeah.
That's very interesting. So what's going to across is having some sort of game plan, and then the fact that you've got a mentor and you've got a peer group helps you in some way to
I think
do that?
some of the people who I mean, it's really competitive to get on this particular scheme, but quite a lot of the people who haven't got on it but have applied having been rejected, got back in touch to say, well, thank you anyway, because even just filling in the form has made me really focus, and now I realise what I need to do. And actually what they need to do isn't that difficult. Once you've actually worked out what it is, you can then go off and do it. And also the people who do get on the scheme, between them, me saying yes, you're on the scheme, and them actually arriving 2 months later, they've quite often done quite a lot of the things they said that they needed to do, just because, like you say, they've kind of focused on it and committed to it and can see what it, the fog is cleared, and it then becomes easy to do. So even if you don't have a mentor, I think if you force yourself to really think about what your goals are, what steps you need to take in order to get to them, how you're going to judge yourself on whether you've been successful or not, and what resources you might need to help you do that, which might be a mentor, it might not be, it might, you might need to get in touch with somebody that you work with at university, or you might need to, take a course or something, I don't know.
Nicola, what about the whole notion of confidence? How important do you think it is to try to help people to become a bit more confident in marketing themselves and just putting themselves out there?
I think it's hugely important, because I think everything that we do, especially if you're a freelancer, everything that, if you're not known to other people, then you're not going to get work, and we all know it's an industry based on relationships, but sometimes those relationships aren't necessarily enough if you've really got quite a small circle, you've been working in one area, and so I think self-promotion is really, really important, and a lot of people are very uncomfortable with that. And one of the first things I make people do is probably get a LinkedIn profile. Even if you never use LinkedIn, it's kind of stating who you are, what you can do, what your strengths and weaknesses are. Having a photo, people hate putting a photo online, even though we live in a world where we've all got Facebook pages and Twitter and what have you. Everybody kind of hates that kind of statement of being a professional person available for hire. And so I think confidence is one of the biggest things that we don't deliberately work on, but I think just the process of, I think the seminar is huge actually, because that makes people stand up in front of a group like this and talk about what they know, and I think until you've been asked to do that and actually think about what you do know and analyse what you know and then formulate that into a way that you can tell the people, and then have the response that these people who've got 20 years experience in the industry actually don't know what you know, that's quite empowering, I think. I think both of you will probably admit that you would have said you were the last people to be sitting in front of an audience like this. And myself too, several years ago, I would never have dreamt that I would be doing this. And now I quite enjoy it. So just the fact that they're sitting here is kind of testament to something in the process. I don't know what it is.
Esther, how do you feel your self-confidence and your ability to network, go out there, look for work? How has that changed over the last couple of years?
I think just having the ability to say that I was on the course, which makes you feel that you've got a valid credential that you might not have had before, and that it's got quite a high media profile so people know what you're talking about when you say that you've been on it. It gives you an extra validation when you are talking to people, and it gives you extra confidence to say, this is who I am, this is what I do, rather than this is what I want to do. So that's what I would say would be fundamental.
Does it help you in how you describe yourself then, rather than as somebody's assistant?
Yeah.
You have been directing?
One of the big things that, and it sounds a small thing, but for me it was quite big, was that I actually then went out and got cards made with my name that said producer stroke director, and that was something that I was putting off. I was procrastinating, and I think it was a good many sessions. It was one of the things on the list that I just kept going. It's like, have you done the card? No. And it took quite a long time to have sort of the courage to have that card that said, but that's what I did. And so that's a good example of the sort of the confidence that it does eventually give you, that I have that card that says that's what I am.
Could I just ask you, how many of you have got a card? Well, that's not bad. Yes, they're already ahead. And what about Newbridge? Have you done your seminar yet?
I haven't, no. My seminar is obviously going to be on editing, from cut to first cut. I do enjoy deadline, and this one's looming, so yes, I've yet to do that. But watching all the other seminars has been really instructive. But coming back to how it's made me feel a bit more confident, on my application I kept pushing down, I think it was aspiring editor. I couldn't even say the word editor. I was so used, for 10 years I worked with my very fine, outstanding editor, and assistant editor always tripped off the tongue, but to actually say editor, I always stumbled over that, which tiny thing, and I'm sure most of you have kind of gone past that, but to actually say that, and now I've got a website and have a Twitter account, I mean, I don't even know who the hell I am now, because I'm not the person I was before I joined the course. I was somebody who was an aspiring editor. Now I can say I'm a film editor, and I haven't got a card, but I'm sure that's to come. I will do, I'm sure.
They've got one, we've got to get
Yeah, absolutely.
I hope Richard won't mind, but I made them do biogs as well when they first joined. And I'd said in the interview, you're an editor, not an aspiring editor, come on. And then the biog came in and she put emerging editor. So I had to send it back and say, can you try again?
Now, you were saying earlier that not everybody can get on the course. I mean, what happens is every year when the mentoring scheme is advertised, we literally get hundreds of applicants, and we can only take 20 people each year. What lessons could you take from taking part in the mentoring scheme or running the mentoring scheme to pass on to people who may not be on a course, may have applied and not got on it? There must be some key points that you could bring out to share with people. Nicola, do you want to start?
I think, in general, I think we can be afraid of reaching out to people and asking for help. And most people at a senior level do want to give back and are very generous of their time, and are quite willing, if you ask them in a nice way, and have got something specific that you want to discuss with them, and it's, you're not after a job, you're after money, then I think most people would be willing to have a coffee with you for an hour if you kind of put the parameters on it. And then who knows, that might turn into a longer term thing. But sometimes some of the mentoring relationships go a bit wrong if somebody's off. We had a mentor who was in hospital for 3 months, so obviously couldn't meet. And so in that situation, I kind of brokered a couple of coffees with different people who would give different perspectives, and that worked really well. And I think that is something that you could probably set up yourself. Then the group thing is, so there's that kind of mentoring of somebody who's more senior, but I think there's a lot that can be said for your peer group as well, because then you've been moving at the same time. Finding who are the people in the past that you've really enjoyed working with, that you really admire, and maybe you just form a little support group yourselves and arrange to meet every 2 months or something, have some kind of format to it, you go for a drink and you each talk about what you want to achieve over the next 2 months, and then that will hold you accountable. You can all kind of, especially if you've got people you've got an editor and a cinematographer and a producer, you can help each other out because you all have a slightly different perspective on problems, and some people will just be able to see a way through immediately, and kind of cut through an issue that you might not be able to if you're just with people that you normally work with. What do you think?
I think definitely the key motivational factor of it was that each month that we met, we set our goals for the next month, and for myself that was a great benchmark, in that you knew that you had to go and tell a whole group of people whether or not you'd achieved your goals, and just out of not wanting to be embarrassed or ashamed that you hadn't done anything, it pushes you forward to actually try and achieve it. And that's the great thing for me, and it's something that you, like I said, if you're not on the course, that you could do anyway, just to have somebody who you trust, who's good at giving you advice to set the goals and to talk to them about it.
Yeah, I found I had a lot of contacts that who, before I was on the course, I thought viewed me as an assistant, so therefore they were useful, they were great, but they perhaps weren't pitched at the level of me now being an emerging me being an editor. Oh dear. Me being an editor. So the thing of it is to actually still go back to your contacts and set up meetings. I think, you know, I found that really quite useful. I closed my contacts book thinking that I'll never be viewed as anything other than an assistant, but I've just recently now gone back in and just thought, well no, I'm going to make a few calls now and I'm going to meet with these people again, and you know, having now been able to say I'm a mentee on this scheme, it's always given me, you know, permission to go out there and kind of rebrand myself, which I have done. You know, I've now, my emails don't look the same. I'm kind of not the same person, so I can relook at my contacts, my old contacts, but with a fresh light. So that's been quite useful actually, and kind of quite organic.
There's also a thing about
permissions, maybe. I noticed.
Well, no, actually saying what you want. I think there's been quite a few people on the scheme who wanted to get. They felt like they were working at a lower level than they were capable of, but they weren't being recognised by their bosses. And then at some point they just had to have a conversation with their boss, because they're on the scheme and were having to take time out of work, which forced them to then say, I actually want to be this. And lo and behold, 2 months later, they were promoted because they did, you know, their boss didn't know that they had that ambition. They didn't know they wanted to do that. And so sometimes just, you know, just putting it out there, or you're saying that you want to do a documentary about something, you know, something particular. If people don't know that, then they can't put you in touch with the right people to help you out. You know, it's all kind of recommendation and word of mouth, and you kind of need to have this network of people who are your advocates and who are not just you self-promoting, but other people who are promoting you and your work too. Was there a question?
No, sorry, no. I was just saying, calling it in, calling what you want, yeah, by naming it.
Yeah.
Well, I was just thinking that as you were speaking just now, that often I think women are particularly inclined to be like this, but it's not exclusive to women. We sort of wait for somebody else's permission for us to see ourselves on the next stage of the ladder, as if people see you working really hard and say, now it's time for you to be an editor. And actually, unless you're with a major broadcaster, and even then, nobody else is going to come up and give you permission to make that transition. It does have to come from yourself, and then you have to sustain it. And maybe it's getting your business card and dropping the adjective before the word editor that does it. Now, at this point, we would love for you to get a chance to ask as many questions as you want. We've got 25 minutes. Now, there's a roving mic somewhere. Have you got that roving mic, young man? There we are. So if you'd like to ask a question, if you raise your hand, the mic will come to you. Here we are.
Hi, my question is, you're talking about a mentoring scheme for people that have had 5 years experience. So is there anything that women in film and television can do for people that are perhaps a little bit lower down the food chain, particularly when it sounds like even your mentees would actually have a lot to offer people kind of a bit further down as well?
Are you a member?
No, but I've sent an email a while ago, but I haven't.
Well, Women in Film run lots of events throughout the year. So there's a writers group specifically for writers who meet, is it monthly, I think, and they have speakers of different sorts, and that's kind of a bit of a support group for writers in particular. And then there's all other kinds of events, like Meet the Commissioner events, which are quite small, intimate, not one-on-one, but you know, just a very small group with the Commissioner talking about what their channel is looking for, if you've got ideas that you want to pitch. And then monthly networking events as well, where you can meet the rest of the members and the board members too.
Yes, we had networking just the other night, and there are a lot of new members come to that. We encourage people to come then, and we had 2 people who come from America who thought, right, we need to get our network. I think Americans have always been ahead of us when it comes to networking. A woman from Bulgaria who works in film who just come over, and Rebecca, who's temporarily disappeared, and myself, and Nicola. Oh, she's taking the photographs, that was Rebecca. We attend these, and some of our board members do, and what we try to do is introduce people to each other. And I think that's one of the strengths of being in any organisation, whether it's the Directors UK or whether you're part of Shooting People or whatever it is is to go to networkings and just very often make sure that you tell people who you are. Just as we shouldn't wait for permission about taking the next step, you shouldn't wait for permission to, tell people who you are. I mean, it would be quite useful if by the end of this session everybody met each other, if you just kind of turn to the person on your right and introduce each other. You just need to get into the way of doing that, and it's amazing how later on, when you might, somebody else might be looking for somebody to help in their film, they say, oh yeah, I met that really nice woman at the networking. Or if you are, say, working in television and you come to one of the commissioning events, where we get a commissioner to come every month and talk. We don't allow people to pitch at the events because commissioners would never come then, it would be too terrifying for them. But they talk about what they're looking for, and then the next day they give out their email. The next day you can email them and say, I was really interested that you're looking for, a film about this, and I've attached, my treatment. Let me know what you think. And all sorts of ways like this where you can promote yourself, but in quite a sort of disciplined way, that it's actually a professional promotion of yourself. That does seem to work. And another thing is that we don't have a mentoring scheme for people just coming into the industry, because there are quite a lot already. But what we had found was there was nothing for women at the next stage. I mean, ideally, we'd have mentoring schemes for all ages. And we've actually got a 63-year-old woman on the scheme just now, haven't we?
But also, you can set up your own, so that in TV, there was, my background's in TV development, and all the development, people working in development, traditionally didn't ever speak to each other because everybody was in competition with each other. But actually, they were quite isolated, and it's a very different discipline than program making, and very different set of skills and knowledge that you need in order to be a good development person. And so somebody actually came up with the idea, rather than us all, battling away on our own and reinventing the wheel often, why don't we, just meet? So he just set up something called the Development Producers Group on meetup.com. Put it out there, emailed a few people, and suddenly he's got like 200 members, and every month I think about 50 people turned up, had a drink. He invited 2 speakers, usually a commissioner and somebody else, to talk for 20 minutes about their commissioning needs, and somebody else might talk about how they cast talent or whatever. And then quite an informal networking between people who, on one hand are adversaries, but also you're working in the same industry. If you might need another development person on your team, so you've got a little network too. And it became a lot more collaborative, and it was just somebody decided to do that. So again, permission to do it yourself if it's not available.
Does that help? There's one question there, and then after you go.
Hi, I've got 2 questions. The first one, you mentioned there are enough schemes already out there sort of for if you're starting off. I know about skill set. I'm not sure if you could mention some other schemes that you know.
Now that you ask me, I can't think off the top of my head. Yeah, First Light and Second Light, they're very good. Guiding lights. Lots of things with lights. Google lights. No, Bird's Eye View don't have one.
Are they youth specific? You have to be like under a certain age?
No, I don't think so.
First and second light.
Yes, but anything that's skill set, I don't think they're age specific. But yes, there are age limits on that, the First Light one.
Good thing to do. Are you on Twitter?
Yes.
Yeah, so if you follow Skill Set and all the other organisations, then they will tweet with, because these schemes come and go, so it's quite hard to keep track of who's doing what at the moment. But if you can follow all those industry organisations, then you will spot when things are happening. And also depending on what your speciality. Are you cinematographer, did you say?
Yeah.
Skill Set Academy? Yeah. I've got a training.
Yeah, I like that one.
And also the broadcasters, it depends at what level you are. If you're just newly coming in, or you've got a couple of credits, Channel 4 have got several schemes where they will place you with production companies in either researcher or development roles, or production coordination roles. The BBC's got a similar scheme, I think, but that is for entry-level people, I think.
Is that the new scheme that they're rolling out?
BBC?
The one that they've got Channel 4.
This is the trouble. There are lots and lots of different schemes. It's quite hard to keep track of it. I don't know. That Channel 4 are always advertising for schemes that they've got, and they run lots of events, lots of networking events as well. So again, follow them. I think that they're called 4 People, Channel 4 People on Twitter. But if you kind of get in with that crowd, see who they're talking to, you'll kind of find yourself in the right room with the right people. That's my point.
Good luck.
Yeah, thank you. The other question I had is, likewise, I don't have enough experience yet to actually apply for the scheme. But I was wondering, do you have any advice that you could give us to approach a mentor or find a mentor of your own?
Do you want to take that one, Nicola?
Well, again, I think if you work out what it is that you want, and then work out who you admire, and then work out if you can actually find them in order to track them down to approach, and then just quite an informal but professional approach, if that makes sense. So, and just introduce yourself, say who you are, say what you do, and you could do with a bit of help with this. Would they possibly have time to meet you for an hour?
Okay, so would it be sort of very direct as an advice on just a question you have, or sort of more literally directly, like, I'm looking for a mentor?
I think that makes people less nervous, because if you say I want to meet with you and pick your brains and, because I think you're wonderful, that's a bit stalker. Yeah. Whereas if you say, I've done this and I feel like I've got a problem with this, they can then decide whether they feel like they can help you or not. So when I'm pitching the mentees to mentors, I do it anonymously. But I say I've got this person. This is what she does. This is what her problem is, her challenge, and this is how I think you can overcome it. And then that makes them feel quite reassured that they can make a difference. They're not going to be wasting their time. B, it's quite time limited, so they don't feel like they're going to get saddled with somebody and not be able to get rid of them. But quite often, if people do get on with you and they do like you, then it might roll on. But I think it'd be quite specific in the beginning. Yeah.
You could also seize the moment if you go to things. I mean, anybody can now go to BAFTA events or London Film Festival events or whatever. And if you're networking, going around and meeting people, then I don't think anybody would be horrified if they met you, if you were to say, well, I wonder if you'd mind having a coffee with me.
What's interesting is when I say on the application form, who would your ideal mentor be, 50% of people put the same person. So this time it's Danny Boyle, who came out every time, because those are the people who are in the public eye, and those people get asked all the time. So chances are they're already mentoring 6 people, and so they don't have time. So sometimes, if you kind of go a little bit lower, A, they're going to have a bit more in common with you. B, they're going to be more flattered that they've been asked. So that's and they might be better anyway. It's not necessarily the top people who are going to be the best people.
And then let us know how you get on.
Thank you.
Leave my cards here. I want to know more. You had a question over there.
It was largely in the same vein to this one.
Right.
But I suppose following on from that.
Thanks. As I said, it was largely in the same vein as the lady that just spoke. But following on from that, I joined Women in Film and Television for exactly that reason. Similarly, I'm less than 24 months in the industry, having been transferred from another industry, and I don't have contacts. I'm getting work, and it's great, and I've been very fortunate, but it's hitting that ceiling that it's very difficult to traverse over when you don't have a big black book. And
what role are you doing?
Well, I've done a few different things, floor running and AD work, and then assisting in the production. Sorry. And then assistant to a director and working in production groups. So really trying to move into that area. And in fact, I can commend to anybody interested in production the Production Guild course, Assistant Coordinator course, which is a skill set course. Assistant Production Coordinator course with the Production Guild, which is run by Skill Set and is fantastic. It's just 2 weeks. But I've really been struggling to find these courses and mentor schemes that you've been talking about. And I appreciate that your mentor scheme is for people of a higher level, 5 years. But even if you don't have the budget and the resources to offer some kind of ad hoc schemes for people of our level, could you maybe do 1 or 2 ad hoc one-off events for that kind of networking opportunity? I'm coming to your networking evenings and they're great, but this question is coming up repeatedly, and maybe there's a gap that you could address there.
There is,
please.
there is, and I've been aware of this, and we've been wondering about having some kind of a buddy scheme, which would be less formal, with less level of commitment on each side. And this is a really kind of heavy-duty scheme. But how many people here think that they would be interested in like having a buddy in the industry? That's something that's
so interesting. Yeah. And we followed your example, and we started a very fledgling support group in East London. But because we're all in a similar position, because it's people that we're meeting ourselves, we're all in the same bracket. So
my advice to you, because you're saying that you're doing some running and ADing, and I started as a stage manager, I trained as a stage manager, and I found that when I was crossing over into film and television, the best way to get jobs was just cold calling, and it was literally going in, phoning up Shepperton, Pinewood, all the film studios, all the television studios, and asking them what was in pre-production. And they could quite often not tell you who was on it, but then you can go on to subscribe to IMDb Pro, and then find out who the head of the department is that you want to work on in that production office, and just email them or send a letter to the film. And that actually works even right the way through your career. That's how I got Pirates. I was at Pinewood on another job, and I knew I had to find out that Pirates was starting. So I just popped along to the production office with my CV, and I got the job. And so it doesn't necessarily have to start with you knowing somebody in that position. People are receptive to cold calls.
Hey guys, when you ask them to raise their hands, could you also actually say how many hands have been raised, just because people listening won't have any idea who's raised their hand?
500 hands have been raised. Yes. Does anyone else have a question? Yes.
Hi. I did apply for the mentoring scheme this year, and I found the form a bit confusing because it seemed like there were many pages that were asking the same thing. Now, I might have been being a bit thick, but I was just wondering if you could guide us through the aims of the form and what you're looking for, really. One of them you tied to some kind of acronym.
Yeah. So I can't quite remember exactly off the top of my head, but basically you're asked to say what your goals are based on the SMART criteria. I don't know if any of you have come across that, but again off the top of my head. So your goal needs to be something specific, something measurable, achievable within the time that you've got available, realistic, and time specific. So that kind of gives you some parameters, and then I think it goes on to say, and how is a mentor specifically going to help you reach those goals rather than you, just doing it yourself. And then I can't remember what the other sections are, but to be honest, it doesn't really matter what people put in what box, as long as the story is coming across of who you are and what you need, and it's clear. So it doesn't matter if part of what you say goes in one box and one goes in a different box and doesn't quite match up with the question. The application form is taken as a whole, and I think the mistakes that people make are not really being quite generic about what it is that their goals are. The applications that stand out are those that somebody just said at an opening, they said, just tell Nicola your story. And that kind of works. The more specific it is to you, the more your personality comes across, rather than just saying, I want to move to the next level. What does that mean? In your terms, what does that mean? And being really specific. So it's not just like an outline sketch, it's got all the colours coloured in as well, if that makes sense. But there's no right or wrong answers, and again, if you apply again and get to the interview stage, I always say there's no right or wrong answers. We're not trying to trick you, just really trying to get to know who you are, and that's all it is, really.
I think it's quite useful to, that was something that occurred to me when I was filling out the application form. I really struggled with filling out the application form, and I think it has to be some kind of a, well, for me personally, it was a struggle for me to actually define what it was that I wanted to do and what my goals were. So, yeah, I think there's anything that is a struggle, I think, is usually worth it. So I think you take that, bear that in mind. Yeah.
And Esther didn't know, because when she came on, all she applied for was 6 hours of mentoring. And during the interview process, I decided it would be a good idea to make them all do seminars and meet every week. So that's a bit of a bait and switch.
Hi, I don't currently work in the film industry, but I'm thinking of getting into film production. Because I think I've spoken to other people who I know who think that I'd be quite good in that area for some reason. And I'm not at the point where I'm able to commit to changing career completely. So I'm really looking at getting some work experience in film production on maybe a 2-week basis, or something just kind of very that wouldn't require me to completely change direction, just to see whether it's what is something that I'd be interested in. I'm just wondering whether you have any advice.
I think it would be very difficult to get onto a feature film or something, because there are so many people coming out with film degrees and so forth looking for the same thing. But what could be great for you would be to help people with a short film, and you might find that there are people sitting around you right now who are making short films and who'd be happy to have an extra pair of hands. Is anybody here filming at the moment? Well, not at the moment, but have a film coming up where you might want an extra pair of hands? Well, right behind you.
Shooting people have an event called Shooters in the Pub, is it called, every month? And I know lots of those people are making films and short films and welcome a hand.
Yes, they would be grateful for your help, I would say, generally, whereas if you approach the big film companies, you're unlikely to really get anything.
Production Base also lists everything that's going on, and they do low budgets as well as big budgets, and they would be quite a good thing to try for, getting that every month. Production Base.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Yes, just could you pass it down? That's great, thank you.
Hi, do you have is there an age where you can start applying for them, or is it I know you need a certain amount of experience, but do you say you have to be a certain age?
No, because that would be ageism. We're awfully against that. No, the point of this is really that because so many women, more women than men, come into the industry, but by the time they're 35, women either feel blocked or they may have left to have children, can't get back in. For whatever reason, most women are not in the industry after 35, so that's why we thought, right, so by that time we've maybe had 5-10 years experience, we'll look for a minimum of 5 years experience. Getting into the industry is actually, believe it or not, easier than staying in the industry. Even people who've made one feature film often find they can't get their next feature film done. And so we were just looking to see how we could shift things, because we've got a working party about ageism and gender. How can we actually help women to have a career? Because you and your brother could both go to film school, and your chances of having a career for the rest of your life are like 50% what his would be, and that to me seems a bit unfair. Because I've been living through 2 lots of Equality Acts, and although gender equality is something that is set up in law, it doesn't really always seem to happen in real life. So anything that we can do from the point of view of changing those stats, then that's really that's the kind of thing that drives me.
And also, I've got 8 years of experience, but they're both in the same industry, one's acting and one's producing. Can I have that as one? As I started off,
yes, definitely, yes.
So you just have to make a good case for it, that's all.
I would say you're very experienced then.
So it doesn't have to be just doing one
No.
thing.
very few people do just one thing. I mean,
I haven't done one thing for 5 years. I've been an assistant to the director for 3, an AD for 6.
In fact, I'm just throwing this in, but you know, Nicola used to be a nurse in an operating theatre, and then she went into work in film and was a factual development.
Well, I actually went into TV when I was 31, and I was told I was too old. I'm the first person who interviewed me. Here I am now.
That's why we'll never retire. Yes, there's somebody there. Thanks. Yeah.
I just wanted to kind of reinforce how glad I am that you've got the scheme, because it seems that in the industry as a whole, things are very much geared to, I don't know, 26-year-old boys who think they're amazing and somehow manage to make the rest of the world. Some of them very talented. Unfortunately, I teach women at a film school as well, and women often don't have that kind of level of confidence, and in any case, it's not necessarily all that lovable. But so the mentoring scheme is fantastic, because not only is it all women in the case of Women in Film and TV, but it does represent lots of ages, and it's very, very refreshing to see that. You know, one of the reasons I'm a member is because I think that is so important. So that's not really a question.
No, but that's really good feedback to get. And I've just been sitting here thinking, at the end of this session, which is coming up in a couple of minutes, I'd like to take the names and email addresses of anybody who's interested in a buddy scheme, because what we've done from the beginning of Women in Film is try to find out where there is a need. And then, you know, we don't do, for example, training, because a lot of people do training. We did this mentoring scheme because nobody else had a mid-career mentoring scheme. And if you're all finding it's quite difficult to find a buddy scheme, maybe we should just get you guys together and do something about it. And that's really the whole point of this women's organisation. And I should point out, though, that although we are all women helping women, on the mentoring scheme, I first thought it should only be women mentors. And then a couple of pretty top women in the industry said, you're really missing a trick if you do that, because the majority of people at the top of the business, both film and TV, are men. And a couple of these women told me that the people who had mentored them, not officially but unofficially, their best mentors had been men. And I think you have found that.
Yeah, we it's not deliberately so, but it tends to work out about 50-50 male-female mentors on each scheme.
Hannah, who's probably the best success story from my year, her mentor was
yeah, her mentor was Danny Cohen, who's now controller of BBC One.
And she's now what, head of?
She was a scheduler at National Geographic Channel, and she wanted to be a commissioner, and she told her boss she wanted to be a commissioner because she had to tell him where she was going every week. And she's now commissioning for Nat Geo for UK and Europe. So yeah, so that worked. But yeah, the men are generally very, very, very keen to help, very supportive, really supportive of women, and take their job as mentor very, very seriously.
In fact, people, even in areas that are traditionally difficult for women in film crews, John de Boorman was one of the cinematographer, was a mentor last year. And this year too. That's fantastic, because he said that he actually thinks it's much better to have a mix in a crew and not have an all-male crew, so he was really happy to help, and apparently he was brilliant at taking the mentee out on set, giving her all sorts of contacts. And you know, we'd have missed that if we had only been looking for either of the two main women cinematographers sort of thing. We've got to get the very best people and bring them to help the women in the group, and that's what we try to do with
by best don't necessarily mean most senior.
No,
it's best fit rather than. Yeah. Did you have a question about?
I have the really awful question. What's the fees for the mentoring scheme?
It's free.
Oh.
Yeah. Cool. Free.
And to be a member, you have to be a member.
No, you don't have to be a member. If you get on the scheme, and that doesn't matter in terms of the application, I do ask you to, but that's just for monitoring. If you get on the scheme, you get a year's free complimentary membership anyway. So you get the 6 months, and then 6 months beyond, you're still a member of the organisation. And if you're already a member, you get a year's extension for free.
Yeah. I have to say that there's no, we don't choose so many members and so many non-members. We don't even look at that at all, because apart from being a membership organisation and providing services for the members, we also are trying to work to help all women in the industry, and we thought that was very important, that people coming on the mentoring scheme, if we can only manage 20 at a time, they've got to be the 20 people that Nicola has decided would be not only, you know, worthwhile for themselves, but they have to be quite a good mix.
Yeah, so I guess I'm looking for people who are at the right point, that they've got something that can actually be helped. Sometimes people have got things that you can't really grasp onto what it is that somebody else could do for them, so it's quite hard. That they're willing to accept help. Some people say that they want to mentor and they want advice, but actually they don't. They just want to be told that they're doing the right thing, in which case, you know, there's not really a job for a mentor there either. And also I'm looking, as well as who's going to benefit from mentoring and who I think I can, you know, the mentor can help, is how they're going to fit in within the group, what they're going to bring, as much as what you need, but what you're going to bring to the group as well. So I'm not only matching with mentors, I'm matching with everybody else in the group, because I think that's really important, that there's a really good mix, and you know, across 3 years now we can make a whole feature film with all different, you know, from conception right through to distribution. And I think that's really valuable too. So, you know, I'm doing lots of different juggling things.
I just want to add to that, actually. I just think, you know, we are in a creative industry that's all about collaboration, and I just feel that one of the key things about being on this course is it really does bring that collaboration to the fore, not only with your peer group, with your communication skills, with actually realising what you have to offer, you know, as your part to play within the group, and also your part to play within the industry, because I do think it's really important, whatever we do, at whatever stage, that we always look behind us and try and help those who are coming along behind, because you never know. The industry is so small, you just never know. So it's important at whatever stage, even though you feel that you perhaps may not have very much to offer, you probably do. This course kind of focuses that, but I think a lot of what we've said today would be really quite useful for people to just kind of take the initiative and bring it on, you know.
Yeah, we're in the middle of one scheme right now, so that will finish at the end of April, and then there'll be a bit of a turnaround and we'll advertise again, but we don't have set dates as yet. If it runs as it did last time, we advertise in July, but that's not decided yet.
Yeah, we're not actually here just to kind of drum up custom for it. I have to say it's because the festival is on that it seemed like a good time to come and talk to people about the importance of it, whether it's our scheme or somebody else's scheme. And also, it's really important for us also to get feedback, not just from some of our members, but from everybody. Now at this point, I think we have to stop, but we're going to be around for a little while, yeah? And so we can, if you want to just get a coffee and just have a chat, that's great. Also, nice piece of paper here for you to put your email address on if you'd like to follow up. And I would just like to say, let's all thank Nicola first of all, but also Esther and Bridge, who really have been pushed onto these stools today and made do a public appearance, and I think they've done terrifically well, so let's all thank them.